In the quiet town of Millfield, Ohio, life moved at a steady pace. The mornings were filled with the smell of fresh coffee from the local diner, and the evenings ended with neighbors chatting on their porches. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names, and nothing exciting ever seemed to happen. That is, until the day the sky changed. It started just after lunch. A low hum filled the air, so faint at first that most people thought it was their imagination. But then the ground began to vibrate lightly, like the distant rumble of thunder. Jack Monroe, a mechanic who spent most of his days fixing cars in his garage, stopped what he was doing and stepped outside. He looked up, squinting at the sky. Something wasn't right. The clouds seemed to ripple, as if pushed by an invisible force. Lily Monroe, Jack's younger sister and a high school teacher, noticed it too. She had been grading papers in her classroom when the windows rattled slightly. At first, she assumed it was just a truck driving by, but when the noise grew louder, she walked to the window. Outside, students were pointing upward, their faces a mix of excitement and fear. Whatever was happening, it was big. Then, without warning, the object appeared. It descended slowly, glowing faintly against the blue sky. The shape was unlike anything anyone had ever seen, a sleek, metallic disk hovering effortlessly above the cornfields on the outskirts of town. People dropped what they were doing and ran outside to get a better look. Some grabbed their phones to record the event, while others simply stood frozen, staring in awe. The military arrived within minutes. Trucks rolled down the main street, kicking up dust as soldiers set up barricades around the area. No one was allowed near the ship, but that didn't stop the crowd from gathering at a safe distance. Jack and Lily found themselves side by side, standing among their neighbors as whispers spread through the group. What was it? Where did it come from? And most importantly, what did it want? Jack scratched his head, his mind racing. "You think it's aliens?" he asked Lily, half joking. "I don't know," she replied, her voice soft but serious. "But whatever it is, it's not from around here." As the hours passed, the ship remained motionless, its surface shimmering like liquid metal under the sunlight. The tension in the air was palpable. Some people speculated that it might be a government experiment gone wrong, while others whispered about alien invasions and doomsday scenarios. But no one could deny the strangeness of it all. Finally, just as the sun began to set, something happened. A section of the ship's surface shifted, revealing an opening. Out stepped creatures unlike anything anyone had ever imagined. They were tall and slender, with smooth, reflective exoskeletons that caught the fading light. Their movements were fluid, almost insect-like, and their large, multifaceted eyes scanned the crowd with an unsettling intensity. The townspeople gasped, some stepping back instinctively. The soldiers raised their weapons, though it was clear they weren't sure what to do next. One of the aliens extended a limb, and a strange pulse radiated outward, making everyone's chests vibrate. It wasn't painful, but it was enough to send shivers down their spines. "What was that?" someone shouted, breaking the silence. No one had an answer. But as Jack and Lily exchanged worried glances, they both knew one thing for certain. Life in Millfield would never be the same again. The crowd stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. The aliens moved slowly, their reflective bodies glinting in the fading sunlight. They didn't seem aggressive, but their presence alone was enough to keep everyone on edge. Jack Monroe shifted uncomfortably, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He glanced at his sister Lily, who looked both terrified and fascinated, her eyes glued to the strange beings. One of the soldiers stepped forward, his weapon raised but not aimed directly at the aliens. "Stay back," he shouted, his voice firm but shaky. The aliens tilted their heads in unison, as if studying him. Then, without warning, they emitted another pulse, a low, vibrating hum that resonated through the air. This time, it felt stronger, almost like a wave washing over the crowd. Some people stumbled backward, clutching their chests, while others dropped to their knees. "What's happening?" Lily whispered, gripping Jack's arm tightly. "I don't know," Jack muttered, his jaw clenched. "But I don't like it." Among the chaos, a man in a dark suit pushed his way through the crowd. It was Agent Daniel Cross, a government official sent to handle the situation. He held up a hand to signal the soldiers to lower their weapons. His calm demeanor stood out amidst the panic. Walking cautiously toward the aliens, he stopped a few feet away and spoke in a steady voice. "We mean no harm. Can you understand me?" The aliens didn't respond verbally, but their movements suggested they were listening. One of them extended a limb again, this time pointing it toward a nearby soldier. A faint beam shot out, striking the man in the chest. The soldier froze mid-step, his body going rigid. For a moment, everyone thought he had been paralyzed, or worse. But then, just as quickly as it happened, the beam faded, and the soldier collapsed to the ground, breathing heavily but otherwise unharmed. "Stand down," Agent Cross barked, raising his hands to stop the other soldiers from firing. The tension was thick, and it seemed like any wrong move could escalate the situation. Private Ryan Cole, one of the younger soldiers, couldn't stay silent. "What are you doing?" he yelled, glaring at the aliens. "You think you can just zap us and expect us to sit here?" To everyone's surprise, the alien turned its attention to Ryan. Another pulse filled the air, this time directed straight at him. Ryan staggered but refused to fall. He gritted his teeth, shouting defiantly, "You want me to shut up? Go ahead and try. I'm not dropping." The alien paused, its multifaceted eyes blinking rapidly. It repeated the process twice more, each time targeting Ryan with the same energy pulse. But no matter how hard it tried, Ryan wouldn't go down. Instead, he stood his ground, yelling louder with every attempt. "Is that all you've got? Come on." Jack watched in disbelief. "This guy's either brave or insane," he muttered under his breath. Lily leaned closer, her curiosity piqued. "Do you think maybe they're trying to turn us off somehow? Like flipping a switch?" "Turn us off?" Jack raised an eyebrow. "What are we, machines?" Before Lily could respond, Agent Cross stepped in again, addressing the aliens. "We are humans. We don't operate like you might expect. You can't just shut us down. If you're here to learn about us, there are better ways." His tone was firm but respectful, and for a moment, it seemed to work. The aliens retracted their limbs and exchanged subtle gestures, as if communicating silently. Ryan finally lowered his voice, though his glare remained fixed on the creatures. "Whatever you're trying to do, it's not gonna work. We don't have an off switch." The aliens appeared intrigued, tilting their heads once more. They lingered for a few more moments before retreating back into their ship. As the hatch closed behind them, the crowd erupted into murmurs. People debated what had just happened, some praising Ryan's bravery while others criticized his recklessness. Agent Cross approached Ryan, his expression unreadable. "You took a big risk back there, Private." Ryan shrugged, still catching his breath. "Maybe. But someone had to show them we're not so easy to scare." As night fell over Millfield, the townspeople returned to their homes, buzzing with questions. Jack and Lily stayed behind longer than most, watching the ship in silence. Something about the encounter felt monumental, as if the aliens had discovered something about humanity that even humans themselves didn't fully understand. Whatever came next, one thing was clear. The aliens now knew that humanity wasn't going to go quietly. The next morning, Millfield buzzed with talk of the previous day's events. News of Ryan Cole's defiance had spread quickly, and people couldn't stop discussing it. Some called him a hero for standing up to the aliens, while others thought he was reckless and could have made things worse. Jack Monroe sat at the local diner, sipping coffee as he listened to the chatter around him. The air was tense, but there was also a strange sense of pride in the way everyone spoke about how humanity had handled itself. Lily Monroe joined him a few minutes later, sliding into the booth with a worried look on her face. "Did you hear?" she asked, her voice low. They're saying the aliens are still watching us. Watching us. Jack frowned, setting his cup down. What do you mean? There are drones, Lily explained. Small, shiny things flying over town. People have seen them near the fields and even over the school. They're studying us. Jack leaned back in his seat, rubbing his temples. Great. So now we've got alien paparazzi following us around. What's next? Are they gonna start asking for autographs? Lily didn't laugh. This isn't funny, Jack. What if they're planning something? What if they decide we're too much trouble and just leave? Or worse? Jack sighed. He knew his sister was right to worry, but he also didn't want to panic. Let's not jump to conclusions yet. Maybe they're just curious. After all, Ryan showed them that we don't back down easily. Across town, Agent Daniel Cross met with a group of scientists and military personnel in a makeshift command center set up inside the high school gymnasium. Maps of the area were spread out on tables, and screens displayed footage from surveillance cameras tracking the alien drones. One scientist, Dr. Karen Ellis, stood at the front of the room, pointing to images captured by the drones. They seem particularly interested in human behavior, she said, her tone calm but serious. Look at this pattern. They hover longer near places where people gather or interact. Schools, markets, parks. It's almost like they're trying to understand how we function as a society. Colonel Matthew Hayes, a stern man with sharp features, crossed his arms. Or maybe they're looking for weaknesses. We can't afford to assume their intentions are peaceful. Agent Cross stepped in before the conversation grew heated. We need more information before jumping to conclusions. For now, let's focus on observing them without provoking further conflict. Meanwhile, Private Ryan Cole found himself becoming an unexpected celebrity. Strangers stopped him on the street to shake his hand or thank him for standing up to the aliens. While Ryan appreciated the support, he felt uneasy about the attention. He wasn't sure what had come over him during the encounter. He'd acted on instinct, driven by frustration and fear. Now, though, he wondered if he'd made a mistake. Later that evening, Jack and Lily decided to take a walk along the edge of town, hoping to clear their heads. As they strolled past the cornfields, they noticed something unusual, a faint glow emanating from the tree line. Curiosity got the better of them, and they cautiously approached. Hidden among the trees was a small dome-shaped structure that hadn't been there before. It hummed softly, its surface shimmering like the alien ship. This has to be one of theirs, Lily whispered, her eyes wide. Do you think anyone else knows about it? I doubt it, Jack replied, glancing around nervously. Should we tell someone? Before they could decide, the dome emitted a soft pulse, similar to the ones the aliens had used earlier. Both Jack and Lily froze, half expecting to feel the same overwhelming sensation Ryan had described. But instead of collapsing or feeling paralyzed, they experienced something different. A flood of images and sounds rushed through their minds. Scenes of distant planets, strange creatures, and advanced technology flashed before their eyes, leaving them breathless. When the vision ended, Lily stumbled backward, clutching her head. What was that? I don't know, Jack admitted, steadying her. But I think they're trying to show us something. Maybe they're not here to hurt us. As they hurried back toward town, the weight of the discovery settled over them. The aliens weren't just observing. They were communicating in their own way. And whether humanity liked it or not, the lines between fear and understanding were beginning to blur. The days that followed felt like a strange mix of normalcy and unease in Millfield. The alien drones continued to hover silently above the town, their shiny surfaces glinting in the sunlight. People tried to go about their daily lives, shopping, working, and sending kids to school. But it was impossible to ignore the constant presence of the visitors from another world. Whispers filled the streets as everyone wondered what the aliens were planning next. Ben Harper, a local farmer with calloused hands and a steady voice, decided it was time to take action. He gathered a group of volunteers at his barn one evening, lighting lanterns to chase away the growing darkness. Jack Monroe and Lily Monroe were among those who showed up, curious about what Ben had in mind. The air smelled of hay and damp earth, and the mood was tense but hopeful. "We can't just sit around waiting for them to make the next move," Ben said, pacing back and forth. "If we want to protect our town and our people, we need to be ready." "What exactly are you suggesting?" Jack asked, leaning against a stack of bales. "We're not soldiers, Ben. What can we do against whatever they are?" "I'm not talking about fighting," Ben replied firmly. "I'm talking about staying calm and smart. If things get worse, we'll need a plan to keep everyone safe. Supplies, shelters, communication, stuff like that." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "He's right. Panic won't help us. If we organize now, maybe we can avoid chaos later." The group spent hours discussing strategies, dividing tasks among themselves. Some would focus on gathering food and water, while others would scout locations for emergency shelters. Jack reluctantly agreed to help repair old radios so they could stay connected if cell towers went down. As the meeting wrapped up, there was a sense of purpose in the air, a small but important step toward taking control of their situation. Meanwhile, Lily found herself drawn deeper into the mystery of the aliens. She couldn't stop thinking about the vision she and Jack had experienced near the glowing dome. The images of distant planets and advanced technology lingered in her mind, sparking questions she couldn't answer. Determined to understand more, she reached out to Dr. Karen Ellis, the linguist working with Agent Cross. Dr. Ellis listened intently as Lily described the experience, nodding occasionally. "It sounds like they're trying to communicate," she said when Lily finished. "But instead of words, they're using images and sensations. It's fascinating. If we can decode it, we might learn why they're here." Lily hesitated before asking the question that had been weighing on her. "Do you think they mean us harm?" Dr. Ellis paused, choosing her words carefully. Tiny lines creased her forehead as she thought. "I don't know yet, but I do know this. They seem confused by us. Humans aren't like other species they've encountered. We fight back, even when it doesn't make sense. That must be puzzling for them." As the days passed, the aliens began conducting experiments openly, though no one was sure how to interpret their actions. Strange devices appeared in fields and parks, emitting soft pulses that made people feel dizzy or disoriented. Most folks avoided these areas, but a few brave souls, including Ryan Cole, volunteered to observe them up close. Each time, Ryan stood his ground, refusing to back away, no matter how uncomfortable the effects became. One afternoon, Jack stumbled upon a group of children playing near one of the alien machines. They laughed as they chased each other, seemingly unaffected by the pulsing energy. Intrigued, Jack approached cautiously. "Hey, kids," he called out. "Aren't you scared of that thing?" One of the boys grinned, tossing a stick toward the device. "Nah, it doesn't hurt. Feels kind of funny, like when your foot falls asleep." Jack frowned, watching the machine closely. Why would the aliens target adults but leave children alone? Was it a test, or something else entirely? Back at the command center, Agent Cross reviewed reports of these incidents, his expression unreadable. "They're learning," he muttered to Colonel Hayes. "Testing us, seeing how we react." "And what happens when they finish?" Hayes asked sharply. "What then?" Cross didn't have an answer. But deep down, he knew one thing for certain. Humanity's greatest strength, its refusal to give up, might also be its biggest challenge. The aliens weren't just studying them. They were trying to figure out whether humans were worth understanding at all. Tensions in Millfield reached a breaking point one crisp afternoon when tragedy struck without warning. A group of children had gathered near the edge of town, playing tag close to where one of the alien devices hummed softly. The machine, smaller than others they'd seen, emitted its usual pulses of energy, harmless, or so everyone thought. But then something went terribly wrong. One of the kids, a girl named Sophie, wandered too close to the device. A sudden surge of energy shot out, knocking her off her feet. She cried out, clutching her arm as tears streamed down her face. Her friends screamed, running to help her, but none of them knew what to do. The sound of their panic quickly drew attention from nearby adults, including Ben Harper, who rushed over with a first aid kit. By the time Jack Monroe arrived on the scene, Sophie was sitting on the ground, pale and shaking, while her mother held her tightly. "What happened?" Jack asked, his voice tight with worry. "It was that thing," Ben said, pointing at the alien device. His hands were still trembling as he packed up the first aid kit. "It wasn't supposed to hurt anyone. Why would it do this?" The crowd grew larger as word spread, anger simmering just beneath the surface. People shouted accusations, some blaming the aliens, others turning their frustration toward the military for not doing enough to protect them. Ryan Cole pushed through the gathering, his jaw clenched. "This is why we can't trust them," he yelled, glaring at the device. "They're dangerous." Agent Daniel Cross arrived shortly after, flanked by soldiers. He tried to calm the crowd, but his words fell on deaf ears. "We're investigating," he assured them, raising his hands. "Please, let us handle this." But no one wanted to listen. Someone threw a rock at the alien device, denting its smooth surface. Others followed suit, pelting it until sparks flew, and the machine sputtered into silence. The act felt cathartic to some, like reclaiming a small piece of control, but it only made things worse. Later that evening, the aliens responded. Their ship descended once more, hovering low over the town square. This time, there was no curiosity in their movements, only purpose. One of the creatures emerged, emitting a pulse that silenced the entire crowd. When it spoke, its voice echoed telepathically in everyone's minds, cold and firm. "You harm our tools. You endanger your own. Why?" Agent Cross stepped forward, his face pale but determined. "We didn't mean for this to happen," he said slowly. "A child was injured. People are scared." The alien tilted its head, studying him. "Fear leads to violence. Violence disrupts understanding. We seek knowledge, not conflict." Before Cross could respond, Colonel Matthew Hayes intervened, his tone sharp and confrontational. "And what about us? Do you care about what happens to us? Or are we just another experiment?" The alien paused, its multifaceted eyes blinking slowly. Then, without another word, it returned to its ship, which ascended back into the sky. The townspeople were left staring upward, unsure whether the encounter had eased tensions or made them worse. That night, Jack and Lily sat together on their porch, watching the stars. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, Lily broke the silence. "Do you think they'll leave now?" "I don't know," Jack admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "But I don't think they'll forget this." Lily sighed, hugging her knees to her chest. "Maybe we should have tried harder to explain. They didn't understand how much that little girl meant to her family, to all of us." Jack nodded grimly. "Yeah, and now we might never get the chance." Unbeknownst to them, the aliens weren't done observing. Hidden cameras captured every moment of the chaos, analyzing human reactions frame by frame. In their own way, they were beginning to see humanity not as a problem to solve, but as a puzzle worth unraveling. And somewhere deep within their vast database, a single question lingered. Could understanding lead to coexistence, or would fear always stand in the way? The morning after the confrontation brought an uneasy calm to Millfield. The alien ship remained visible in the sky, hovering silently as if waiting for something. People went about their routines cautiously, casting nervous glances upward. Jack Monroe spent most of his time fixing a broken tractor at Ben Harper's farm, trying to keep busy and push away the heavy thoughts weighing on his mind. Lily, meanwhile, sat at the kitchen table with stacks of notes spread out before her, jotting down ideas about how humans could better communicate with the aliens. Later that day, Agent Daniel Cross called a meeting at the town hall. He stood at the front of the room, addressing a group of volunteers that included Jack, Lily, Ben, Ryan Cole, and several others. His expression was serious but hopeful. "We've been given another chance," he began. "The aliens want to try again, to understand us. But this time, we need to show them who we really are." "How do you suggest we do that?" Ben asked, crossing his arms. "They don't speak our language, and half the town still thinks they're here to wipe us out." Cross nodded, acknowledging the challenge. "That's why we're going to focus on actions, not words. We'll share examples of humanity's greatest achievements, things like art, music, science, and cooperation. Show them what makes us unique." Lily raised her hand hesitantly. "What if they don't care? What if it's too late?" "It's worth a shot," Cross replied firmly. "If nothing else, it might prove to them that we're more than just stubborn creatures who fight back." Over the next few days, the townspeople worked together to prepare a presentation for the aliens. Artists painted murals depicting scenes of human history. Musicians composed pieces blending traditional and modern sounds, and scientists gathered data showcasing breakthroughs in medicine, space exploration, and technology. Even the children contributed, drawing pictures of families, pets, and dreams for the future. When everything was ready, Agent Cross arranged a meeting near the edge of town, close to where the alien ship often hovered. A small stage was set up, surrounded by speakers, projectors, and displays. As the appointed time approached, the townspeople gathered nervously, unsure whether the aliens would even show up. To everyone's relief, the ship descended slowly, stopping just above the ground. Several of the insect-like beings emerged, their movements careful and deliberate. They positioned themselves in front of the stage, their multifaceted eyes scanning the crowd and the preparations. The presentation began with a slideshow projected onto a large screen. Images of ancient civilizations, towering skyscrapers, and breathtaking natural landscapes flickered across the display. Music played softly in the background, shifting from classical symphonies to energetic jazz tunes. When the slides transitioned to photos of people helping one another, rescuing strangers during disasters, building homes for those in need, the aliens tilted their heads, seemingly intrigued. Next, young students performed a short play about teamwork and friendship, followed by a scientist explaining the basics of human innovation using simple diagrams. Throughout it all, the aliens watched intently, occasionally exchanging subtle gestures with each other. When the final piece, a recording of Earth seen from space, accompanied by a heartfelt speech from Lily, played, there was a noticeable shift in the atmosphere. The aliens' leader, designated Echo 7, stepped forward and emitted a low hum. This time, the pulse felt different, not intrusive or overwhelming, but almost appreciative. Agent Cross took a cautious step toward Echo 7. "Do you understand now?" he asked quietly. "This is who we are. Flawed, yes, but capable of incredible things." Echo 7 paused before responding telepathically. "Your resilience, your creativity, these are rare among species, yet fear drives much of your behavior. Can you overcome it?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. For the first time, humanity wasn't being judged solely on its ability to resist. It was being challenged to grow. And though no one knew what came next, the possibility of peace felt closer than ever. The days following the presentation were filled with a cautious optimism in Millfield. The aliens hadn't left, but they also hadn't caused any more trouble. Instead, they began conducting what seemed like controlled experiments, testing how humans reacted to challenges, puzzles, and even teamwork scenarios. These tests weren't random. They were designed to push people to their limits, both physically and emotionally. Jack Monroe found himself volunteering for one of these experiments, partly out of curiosity, and partly because he wanted to prove that humanity wasn't as unpredictable as the aliens might think. The setup was simple. A group of 10 volunteers, including Ben Harper and Ryan Cole, had to work together to solve a series of tasks inside a glowing dome erected by the aliens. The dome hummed softly, its walls shimmering with faint, shifting patterns that made it hard to focus. The first task involved moving large, heavy blocks into specific positions without speaking. At first, frustration bubbled over as everyone tried to take charge. "Move that one over here," Ryan barked, pointing at a block. But when no one listened immediately, tempers flared. Jack stepped in, raising his hands. "Hold on. Yelling won't help. Let's figure this out step by step." Slowly, the group began to cooperate. They used gestures and eye contact to communicate, finding ways to lift and shift the blocks efficiently. When they finally completed the task, the dome emitted a soft pulse, almost like applause. It was oddly satisfying, and Jack couldn't help but grin. The second task was harder, a maze filled with obstacles that required quick thinking and trust. Some sections forced pairs to rely on each other, blindfolded and guided only by voice commands. Lily Monroe participated in this part, paired with Dr. Karen Ellis. As they navigated the maze, Lily realized how much faith she had to put in someone else's guidance. "Left. No, my left," she shouted at one point, laughing nervously when they nearly collided with a wall. Despite the stress, they'd made it through, emerging sweaty but triumphant. Each test revealed something new about humanity, not just individual strengths, but the power of working together. Some groups failed miserably, arguing or giving up too quickly. Others surprised themselves with their ingenuity and determination. Through it all, the aliens observed silently, their reflective bodies glinting under the artificial light of the dome. Lily spent hours afterward talking with Dr. Ellis about what the aliens might be learning. "They're not just testing us physically," Lily said thoughtfully. "They're looking at how we handle fear, anger, and frustration, how we adapt when things go wrong." Dr. Ellis nodded, adjusting her glasses. "Exactly. And I think they're starting to see that our emotions aren't weaknesses. They're tools. They drive us to keep going, even when logic tells us to stop." But not everyone was on board with the experiments. Colonel Matthew Hayes watched from a distance, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. He didn't trust the aliens' intentions, no matter how peaceful they seemed. "This is a waste of time," he muttered to Agent Cross during a briefing. "We're playing along while they gather intel. What's stopping them from using this against us later?" Cross sighed, rubbing his temples. "I get your concerns, Colonel. But right now, cooperation feels like our best shot. If we shut them out completely, we risk escalating tensions." Aves scowled but didn't argue further. Still, his unease spread among some of the soldiers, planting seeds of doubt in an otherwise hopeful situation. As the experiments continued, Echo 7, the leader of the aliens, began interacting more directly with the humans. One evening, after a particularly grueling test, Echo 7 approached Jack and Lily. Its telepathic voice resonated gently in their minds. "Your species values perseverance, yet struggles with trust. Why?" Lily hesitated before answering. "Because we've been hurt before. Trust takes time." Echo 7 tilted its head, processing her words. Then it asked another question, one that lingered long after the conversation ended. "If trust is fragile, how do you unite when faced with true danger?" That night, lying awake in bed, Jack replayed the question in his mind. The aliens weren't just curious. They were searching for answers about survival, connection, and coexistence. For the first time, he wondered if humanity's greatest strength wasn't its refusal to give up, but its ability to come together despite everything that divided them. The fragile peace in Millfield shattered one fateful night when betrayal struck from within. Colonel Matthew Hayes, growing increasingly impatient with the slow progress of diplomacy, decided to take matters into his own hands. Convinced that the aliens posed a threat too dangerous to ignore, he gathered a small group of loyal soldiers and devised a plan to strike at the heart of their presence, the alien ship itself. Under the cover of darkness, Hayes and his team moved silently toward the glowing vessel, which hovered silently near the edge of town. Armed with experimental weapons designed to disrupt alien technology, they approached with determination etched onto their faces. Jack Monroe, who had been working late in his garage fixing a truck, noticed unusual activity outside his window. Squinting into the night, he saw shadows moving quickly across the fields. "What's going on?" he muttered to himself, grabbing a flashlight and heading out cautiously. As he got closer, he realized it was the military, but something about their movements seemed off. They weren't patrolling. They were advancing directly toward the ship. Before Jack could react, chaos erupted. The soldiers opened fire, their weapons emitting sharp bursts of energy that slammed into the ship's surface. Alarms blared inside the vessel, and its once steady hum turned erratic. Aliens poured out of the hatch, their reflective bodies shimmering in the moonlight as they tried to defend themselves. Bright flashes lit up the sky as both sides exchanged fire, turning the quiet countryside into a battlefield. Lily Monroe heard the commotion from her bedroom and rushed outside, her heart pounding. She spotted Jack running toward the conflict and called out to him. "Jack, what's happening?" "It's the army," Jack shouted back, gesturing wildly. "They're attacking the ship." Lily froze, horrified. Without thinking, she sprinted toward the center of town, hoping to warn Agent Daniel Cross and anyone else who might be able to stop the madness. By the time she reached the command center, Cross was already scrambling to respond. His face was pale with shock as he grabbed a radio. "Stand down immediately," he barked into the device. "This is not authorized." But Hayes ignored the order. His mind was made up. He believed destroying the ship would protect humanity, no matter the cost. As the battle raged on, civilians began emerging from their homes, drawn by the noise and flashing lights. Some cheered for the soldiers, while others pleaded for them to stop. Among the crowd stood Ryan Cole, his fists clenched tightly. "Are you insane?" he yelled at the nearest soldier. "You're gonna get us all killed." The tide turned when Echo 7, the leader of the aliens, stepped forward amidst the chaos. It raised one of its limbs, emitting a powerful pulse that knocked several soldiers, including Hayes, off their feet. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, with a cold telepathic voice, Echo 7 addressed the crowd. "Violence solves nothing, yet you choose it again." Agent Cross pushed through the gathering, his hands raised in surrender. "Please," he said desperately. "Not everyone here agrees with this attack. Give us a chance to make it right." Echo 7 hesitated, its multifaceted eyes scanning the humans before it. Finally, it lowered its limb, signaling its followers to stand down. The remaining soldiers dropped their weapons, looking shaken and defeated. Hayes struggled to his feet, glaring at Cross. "You've doomed us all," he spat bitterly. As dawn broke over Millfield, the damage became clear. Several soldiers were injured, including Ryan, who had been caught in a crossfire while trying to intervene. Smoke rose from parts of the alien ship, though it remained intact. Trust between humans and aliens hung by a thread, frayed but not yet broken. Later that morning, Jack and Lily sat together on the porch, watching as volunteers worked to clean up the aftermath. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Lily broke the silence. "Do you think we can fix this?" "I don't know," Jack admitted, staring at the horizon. "But if we don't try, then what's the point of any of this?" In the distance, Echo 7 watched silently, its expression unreadable. Humanity had proven once again that it was capable of great destruction, but also, perhaps, of redemption. In the days after the attack, Millfield was a town divided. Some people blamed Colonel Hayes and his rogue soldiers for shattering the fragile trust that had begun to form with the aliens. Others argued that the aliens were never truly trustworthy and that Hayes had acted out of necessity. Tensions ran high, and conversations often ended in heated arguments. Jack Monroe found himself caught in the middle, torn between those who wanted peace and those who feared further conflict. Lily Monroe, however, refused to give up hope. She spent hours poring over notes and discussing ideas with Dr. Karen Ellis, determined to find a way to rebuild the connection with the aliens. "We've come so far," Lily said during one late-night meeting at the command center. "We can't let this be the end." Dr. Ellis nodded, her brow furrowed in thought. "You're right. But we need something powerful, something that shows them we're worth another chance." That's when Lily remembered the presentation they had put together earlier, the one filled with art, music, and stories of human resilience. "What if we show them more?" she suggested. "Not just what we've done, but why we do it. Our struggles, our sacrifices, our dreams. Maybe then they'll understand that humanity isn't perfect, but we're trying." The idea quickly gained support from Agent Daniel Cross, who saw it as their best shot at salvaging the situation. With help from volunteers, they organized a new display, a collection of personal stories, photographs, and recordings from people across Millfield. Farmers shared tales of hard work and perseverance. Teachers spoke about inspiring young minds, and families recounted moments of love and loss. Even Ryan Cole, still recovering from his injuries, contributed by sharing how he learned to face fear without backing down. When everything was ready, Agent Cross approached Echo 7 cautiously, holding a small device containing the recordings. "Please," he said, his voice steady but sincere, "give us one more chance to show you who we are." Echo 7 studied him for a long moment before nodding slightly. The alien leader led Cross and a small group of humans, including Lily and Jack, into the ship. Inside, holographic projections flickered to life, displaying scenes from other planets where the aliens had encountered species that surrendered easily or fell into chaos under pressure. It was clear they viewed humanity as an anomaly, a species driven by emotions and determination rather than logic alone. As the recordings played, the aliens watched intently. They saw images of communities coming together after disasters, heard songs written to heal broken hearts, and listened to speeches about fighting for freedom. When a recording of a child describing their dream of becoming an astronaut appeared, one of the aliens tilted its head curiously, as if puzzled by such optimism. When the presentation ended, Echo 7 emitted a low hum, signaling approval, or perhaps contemplation. Then it addressed the group telepathically. "Your actions confuse us. You fight even when it seems pointless. You risk yourselves for others. And yet, you create beauty amidst struggle. Why?" Lily stepped forward, her hands trembling but her voice strong. "Because that's who we are. We don't always get it right, but we keep going. We learn, we adapt, and we hope for a better future." Echo 7 paused, its reflective body shimmering faintly. Finally, it responded. "Hope is rare among species. Perhaps it is your greatest strength and your greatest challenge. Show us you can coexist, with each other and with outsiders. Only then will we decide whether peace is possible." With that, the aliens retreated back into their ship, leaving humanity with a daunting task, proving that their capacity for cooperation could outweigh their instincts for division. As Jack and Lily walked home under the stars, they knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in days, there was a glimmer of hope, and a chance to prove that humanity's story wasn't over yet. Months passed, and Millfield began to change in ways no one could have predicted. With guidance from the aliens, new technologies were introduced that improved daily life for everyone. Solar panels powered homes more efficiently, water filtration systems provided cleaner drinking water, and advanced tools helped farmers like Ben Harper increase their crop yields. The once distant dream of a better future started to feel within reach. But the transformation wasn't just about technology, it was about people. Inspired by the challenge set by Echo 7, the townsfolk worked harder than ever to bridge divides and build connections. Neighbors who had barely spoken before now shared meals and stories. Volunteers organized community projects, planting trees, repairing roads, and building playgrounds for children. Even Colonel Hayes, though still skeptical, found himself pitching in during town meetings, his sharp edges softened by the shared effort to move forward. Jack Monroe noticed the shift as he tinkered in his garage late one afternoon. A group of kids played nearby, laughing as they chased each other around a newly built swing set. "Things are different now," Lily said, leaning against the doorway with a smile. "Yeah," Jack replied, wiping grease from his hands. "Different, but maybe better." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "It's like we're finally figuring out what really matters. Not just surviving, but living." The aliens remained in orbit above Earth, observing quietly. They didn't interfere directly anymore, but their presence was felt in subtle ways. Drones occasionally scanned the area, recording moments of cooperation and creativity. Echo 7 had made it clear. Humanity would be judged not only on how they treated each other, but also on how they interacted with outsiders and themselves. One crisp morning, the alien ship descended once more, this time landing gently in an open field outside town. Curious residents gathered at a safe distance, watching as Echo 7 emerged alongside several others. Agent Daniel Cross stood at the front of the crowd, flanked by Jack, Lily, and Dr. Karen Ellis. The air buzzed with anticipation. Was this the moment of judgment? Echo 7 stepped forward, its reflective body catching the sunlight. It raised one limb, and a holographic projection appeared above it. A swirling mix of images showing humanity's achievements over the past months. There were scenes of people working together, children playing, and even small acts of kindness captured in vivid detail. Finally, the projection shifted to display a single message written in every human language. Asterisk, you do not have an off switch because you were never meant to give up. Asterisk. A hush fell over the crowd as the meaning sank in. Humanity's refusal to surrender, even when faced with fear or failure, wasn't a flaw. It was a strength. And though it often led to conflict, it also drove innovation, compassion, and growth. Echo 7 lowered its limb and addressed the crowd telepathically. Your journey is far from over. But today we leave knowing you are capable of greatness and of learning. Perhaps one day we will meet again. With that, the aliens returned to their ship. The hatch closed silently, and the vessel ascended into the sky, disappearing among the stars. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, applause broke out. Soft at first, then growing louder until it echoed across the fields. As weeks turned into months, life in Millfield continued to flourish. Though scars remained from the early days of uncertainty, hope blossomed like wildflowers after rain. Jack often reflected on how much had changed, not just in the town, but in himself and those around him. Humanity had been tested, and while it hadn't been perfect, it had proven something important, that even without an off switch, people could choose to keep moving forward. And somewhere deep in space, aboard their shimmering ship, the aliens carried with them a newfound respect for the stubborn, resilient species called humans, the ones who refused to stop fighting for a brighter tomorrow.